I wanted to make this video because I think this may be helpful to people who are going through the death of one of or both of their parents. Having both of my parents have passed away and having been on the other side of it, of course, I would never ever wish death upon anyone, and I would give anything for them to be back, right? But what I do understand is that in terms of the way nature works, is that as humans, it almost seems like we have to experience the death of one or both of our parents in order to learn some very serious and important lessons so we can become true adults. And this is why I wanted to share my story about what I went through with both my parents, what it was like, in my life with them while they were alive, and how it was during and after their deaths. In the hope that maybe it can help someone out there, give you some hope that things can get better and it can turn into a positive eventually, because it's very painful and confusing and difficult when you lose them. So with my mother, I believe she had a fair amount of mental health issues when I was younger. She was sort of unable to offer any sense of compassion or care or really love, or I never really felt like she understood or wanted to hear what I had to say, or really could show me any form of affection or anything like that. I just remember her drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, watching TV, and she used to type on her typewriter, and she had a couple of hobbies, and she used to cook dinner for us. And although obviously I'm infinitely grateful she brought me into the world, I don't really feel like she had the health and the knowledge and the self skills in order to actually bear children in a healthy way. She ran away from home when she was younger, and all of her family said that she was, a fair bit of trouble. Who knows how much of this is true, because her family was a bit of a mess. But what I do know is that she had a lot of issues with, basic kindness and appreciation of people, and allowing her kids to feel like they matter. Just really basic things that I just never had from her. And it was very difficult. And I hated her for most of my life, even when I was a kid, but I didn't really understand why. I just knew that I was angry and I didn't like being around her. And I did, to some degree, placate myself and sort of be a nice guy around her in order to gain some kind of approval, or try to get her to like me or give me something. And it never really worked. I did have some skills, like, I sort of had some mastery over classical instruments and stuff. And a lot of this was to try to get their attention, and it sort of worked every now and then. But it never really fulfilled that need that a child has, for their parents to care about them, right? So eventually, her and I basically, when I was older, I was drunk and high and who knows what. And I called her one day and just abused her. Everything just came out. I was so angry. Every bit of pain that I felt from my childhood came out, and I said some really awful things to her, and that I don't believe any mother should ever have to hear. But I think, had we had a mature relationship, and had she been mature enough, she might have seen that I didn't really mean what I said. It's just, this was what happens when you put someone under so much pain for so long, and they're not able to actually talk or speak back because of fear that you give them. It can come out, and that's what happened. And then we never really spoke again for a long time. 10, 15, maybe 20 years. Maybe 15. It was a long time. And yeah, and then I think I at one point when I'm happy, I found that she had gone to hospital, and I went to where she lives and tried to find her, even though I had no information. So I was researching and trying my best, and I went to all these houses and tried to find her because I wanted to see her because she was sick, and I definitely wanted to try to somehow reconcile before she died, right? I don't know if that would have been possible because I think her mental health declined a fair bit. But I don't know, right? I didn't see her for so long. But I know my sister called her at one point and she denied having children at all. And yeah, we did, she did try to reach out but so I was traveling, I was in Israel, and I found out that she had passed away in her home. And I actually came straight back to Australia, and all I could have in my mind is that I wanted to be with, at least see her body, or be with her, because I hadn't seen her for so long. And it sounds quite dark, but I just wanted to see what she looked like and who she was, and you know. But the hospital wouldn't let me because she had been decaying in the home for months, I think. Months and months in her home before someone found her, which is very sad because it means she was alone. I know she had her partner, my stepfather David, who wasn't a terrible man. He was violent, very violent towards me at times. My God. But he didn't drink, and he eventually did say sorry for some of the stuff. And I really appreciated that. He was sensitive, and he was a lot more emotional, slightly more emotionally intelligent than my mother in terms of that sort of stuff. But she was intelligent. She was very intelligent, but just not very good with people or herself. I guess what that comes down to. But she was with him, and they were with each other for a fair while. And I think maybe 10 years before she passed away, he passed away. So she did have him, and I'm happy about that. And yeah, then I found out she'd passed away, and the fact that she'd been alone for months really played on my mind, just thinking, man, she had no one, you know, because she always used to cut friends off and all this stuff, and I definitely have some of these problems that I'm working on. And the hospital wouldn't let me see her body, and I was like, come on, man, like, they wouldn't do it. The best I got was I was allowed to stand in the room with her body, but it had to remain covered because they said it would be too traumatizing even for the staff. So I said, okay, that's fine. And that's what I did. And I knew it was her because it was the same. She was short, you know, and it was the same size as her. It was very skinny, the outline. And I just stood there breathing and just sort of thinking, I'm sorry. Like, it's so sad that we never really got on, you know. It never really worked out for both of us because, I mean, for her to lose touch with all of her kids, she has 3 kids, she lost touch with all of them. And for us kids not to have a mother, because, you know, it's great to have a mother. Even though I never really had that. I did sometimes with my father's, sort of my stepmother. They weren't married, but I felt that sense of having a positive mother a little bit. But yeah, and I just remember standing there and just breathing and thinking it's so sad, you know. But I do genuinely hope that she's at peace, and I'm not religious in that sense, like, but it will be nice to think that you know, she had some happiness or love, or wasn't so alone at some point. And from this, what I garnered from this experience is that I felt very proud of myself in terms of trying to find her that one time I did, months before this happened. I think a year before maybe. Even though I knew that she would probably slam the door in my face. She would deny, and it would be a very, very painful experience for me. I still tried to do the right thing and find her, and I got very close. I was in the ward, she was in a hospital, but they couldn't give me the information because I didn't know her address, and it was suspicious. It was, and I didn't know her last name because she changes her last name a few times. But I felt a sense of pride that I did that because I think that was the right thing to at least try to do. I really tried. And then to go and be with her body in the state that it was in, I think I felt proud about that as well. And yeah, that's something that one of the main things that I got from both of these experiences with my mother and father is an increase in the sense of pride that I have for myself, and understanding that doing things that I know to be right but are difficult is how I grow self-esteem. You just become proud because you did what was right even though you know it's going to hurt you. And then since then, since that, there's been a lot of things. As I've matured, I've understood that how much of, because I really rejected her. I sort of hated her, and I always always understood that I would never be like her, right? I'm nothing like her. But then, as I got older, especially in the couple of years after she passed away, I started to see her in myself very clearly. I see her intelligence and her insightfulness, but I also see her struggles with relationships and friendships. And she has a kind of narcissism that she was just unable to offer care for others or empathy, or, be able to be trapped in herself. And I definitely can show these. I'm probably more fall on the side of anxious attachment. But if something goes wrong, or if something bad happens, if someone treats me bad, then I can turn on this narcissism thing that she kind of had. Or if I'm in a lot of pain, I get trapped in my fog, that's very hard to reach out of it. And I see all this stuff in her, definitely. The thing that I have that I don't think she did was, we have the internet. She did have it for a while. And it's not just that, but I was just somehow, it's always had that will to try to be better. Always wanted to be better, but I never really saw that in her. But also that will to try to be better, and having the internet with the information I can gather to find ways to be better. It helps, so I've definitely overcome a fair amount of the stuff that she showed, that I just never really saw that she was interested in becoming better, or trying different things. But yeah, that pretty much was, you learn so much about yourself in having a parent die, and you look back on everything and thinking, how it can be very confusing because you've always had a parent and then suddenly you don't. And then for some reason, I just started to see my parents inside myself more than ever after they both died. That the lessons, because I was much closer to my dad, when he passed away, the lessons were heaps more powerful, really life-changing stuff. And so the thing was, when I was a kid, because my mother and father had a divorce or broke up or whatever when I was 5, I think. And I remember him leaving. There was a couple of violent events where my stepfather beat up my father and stuff like that messed me up a bit. But I did still see him every, I think, couple of weeks, if that. And he made a lot of effort. But my mother poisoned me. Her and my stepfather used to say very negative things about him. They used to be a little bit racist because he has a Jewish background. And all these things because I think he had more money than them, and they were always, just feed me this poison to make me hate him, it seemed. if you're a parent and you've broken up, please don't do this to your children. It achieves nothing. What actually it achieved was, I realized later on in life, that my mother was the problem and I ended up being closer to my father. That's what it achieved. You just achieve the thing you're trying to prevent, right? It's so painful for a kid, that stuff. I was terrified of my father because she kept scaring me by saying, I'm going to send you there to live. And I look back and I'm like, I should have went there to live because it would have been a lot better. I would have had a much better life when I was a kid. But, and it took me a while with my father. But then as I got older, I started to make more effort. We started to connect. I started to work with him. He was a very good salesman. He'd only ever worked for another person once in his life. And I remember when he did it and he hated it, but he had so many ideas from it. And everything else he ever did, he was an entrepreneur. He was a salesman and he sold carpets and vacuums and fruit and vegetables and owned businesses. And he was amazing with that stuff. And I have that in me as well. I have that entrepreneurial quality. I've just never really done it to any great extent because I never found fully the thing that I wanted to stick to. But I'm working on it. But I got closer to him because we worked together a bit and I went to see him at the Gold Coast and it was kind of fun. His partner was really cool. She treated us really well, really fun and happy. And I used to help him in his shop, and then later on I worked with him selling strawberries when he got older. He started wanting to learn about how to invest in the share market, and I was helping him with that, and we talked about that a lot. But it always remained somewhat awkward between us, and definitely my own I have awkward people skills for sure, is a big part of that. And I didn't really appreciate having a father for what it was, because I never really had one. Like, even though he was always there and he tried so hard, I never felt that thing you're supposed to feel, that closeness you're supposed to feel, because, he was gone so much and I was sort of pretty damaged from my mother and my stepfather because I never felt close to them, and I never really felt a sense of family with my father. So it was a bit difficult and strained, and I would complain sometimes, and I see it differently now, but you know, and we would hang out, and it would be good sometimes. It'd be fine. Other times it's really awkward, but we both kept trying, and I know that's in my heart. We both tried so hard, and that never. That's something I'm proud of, and I think he would be as well, because it was so difficult, because that poison that I was fed as a kid, and he was a good man. He did not deserve any of it. He made some mistakes, but it didn't make him a worse person. He was a hard worker. He was a creative person. He was an incredible salesman. He had good people skills in terms of his sales stuff, and he had love. He had a heart of love. And then I found out he had cancer, and he was saying to me that he doesn't think he's going to die. He feels fine. Man, I think it was pretty soon after. It was like a few months later after that conversation, I get this call from his partner saying, "You need to come now." And I'd already seen him a fair few times when he'd had it. And you can see that he was very tired and he was very skinny. He was losing energy, and they were smashing him with the radiation, and he wasn't in ketosis. He wasn't doing all the things that you do, that we know to do now, because he trusted the medical system, because that's his generation, right? But he was trying. Of course he tried. He was, and then I got that phone call, and I went to the hospital and I saw him, and then I just knew. I knew it was finished soon. You could see that he was unwell. He was a very physical man, very much like me. He was always running and exercising. His jobs were so laborious, and all day, every day, labor, exercise. Even when he was 73, he was running, he was doing push-ups, he did so well, He didn't drink much. and he tried his best with his food. He ate a lot of fruit and vegetables. He did his best. He got diabetes, and that's the beginning of the end, right? That seems to be the beginning of everyone's demise, is when they get that insulin resistance from smashing themselves with fat and carbs so much. That combination is a killer, right? So I saw him there in the hospital, and this is one of the most life-changing things that have ever happened to me, because before this moment of seeing him, I went to my father, and it was always a kind of confusing struggle. I appreciated the man, and I tried, and he tried, but it was always conflicted around him. Like, I would get annoyed and irritated. I just didn't see this man. I sort of saw this person that can be annoying sometimes. And then I saw him in the hospital, knowing he was about to die, and instantly everything was gone. Every bit of the way I saw him before, with the awkwardness, any negativity was gone, and all I saw was everything that he had ever been, which was love. He was pure love towards me. He really tried. He didn't even try. It just was who he was. He would hug me. He would shake my hand. He would try to give me advice. It was incredible, the amount of love he was as a human being, and it was pure. He really had this golden heart, and I never saw it until that moment. Excuse me. It is heartbreaking to think that, but that moment was like, oh my God, if only I'd seen this before. But that's really the human affliction, is that we see it when it's too late, or you don't realize it until it's gone, right? I still, at that moment, was still feeling awkward, and I didn't really say the things I should have said, but I knew that for some reason, I had to be the strongest person there. And I tried to give my dad the best death he could have had. And I got his son, a son he hadn't spoken to in 20 years, to come and see him. And it was incredible to be able to do that for him. And I brought him a beer to try to get him his last beer. I was running around, making all the decisions and being there for everyone and making sure everything's okay, staying there with him to make sure someone's always there with him. I wasn't sleeping. I was just being the strongest person there. Everyone looked to me for leadership and guidance. And I'm so proud of that, because I was able to overlook my pain to be able to try to give my father everything he could possibly want in his last few days in this earth. And I'm so proud of that. It's one of the proudest moments of my life. And to bring him his son that he hadn't seen for so long was just magic. It was magic that happened for him. And yeah, and then eventually he passed away, and it was okay. I remember, for some reason, it was okay. Like, I remember going to see the body. I kissed his forehead. He was gone. What's interesting is when you see, I didn't expect this, but you see someone who's alive, and then you go and see them and they're past and they're gone, then you know they're not there. It's really eerie. You just know, like, what is this? This is not them. This is just some weird thing. A very, very strange experience. That the life is gone, the energy, the spirit, whatever animates a human is just gone, and it's very eerie, the experience of it. And then after that, it was just very confusing not having him, and I was just realizing all these things about how much of him I have inside me, and all these things about, like I said before, and it really was a very powerful, life-changing experience that makes you understand yourself and people and the way reality works, the way there's no objective reality, there's just our bullshit that we place on everything, and how strong you can be as a human in the situations that you need to be, how much you can be loving and selfless when you have to be. They truly are gifts in that sense. And eventually it has to happen to everyone, right? And if you're going through it, then it sucks. And it never really doesn't suck, right? It's never a good thing. But good things come from it. And you will be a much better person because of what's happening to you now. All this pain and confusion. You will be a much better person and live a much better life because of this. I know it, because I've lived it. So yeah, I hope you guys got something out of that. I've enjoyed sharing it with you, and reach out if you need anything. All the best.